Hello, my friends. Today we'll start right away with the situation in the Pokrovsk direction as it's the most active front. There are reports of up to 8 assaults per day in this area. Ukrainian armed forces soldiers are already reporting that Russian forces are breaking through toward Udachne and attempting to establish a foothold there, which could worsen the situation in this sector. Fighting is also ongoing near the village of Kotline. The Ukrainian forces have prevented the Russians from entrenching themselves in the fields, leaving the salient you see near the village of Grishane in the gray zone. We just need to wait for an updated map. Additionally, the Russians continue to storm Uspenivka in an attempt to advance further toward the Dnipropetrovsk region. They also haven't stopped trying to push directly toward the outskirts of Pokrovsk. The assault on Zelene, Lysivka, the outskirts of Mirnograd, the village of Promень, Myrolюбivka, and are making breakthroughs near Baranivka in the direction of Kurakhove. The Russians are continuing their aggressive push toward Andriivka. Ukrainian forces soldiers report that battles are now underway for the settlement itself. However, so far the Russians haven't managed to establish control and the front line hasn't shifted in the past day. Nonetheless, the situation remains very difficult as another encirclement appears to be forming here. In the direction of Velika Novosilka, the Russians are currently not showing any activity and are instead fortifying their new positions. For now, we are waiting to see how events will unfold. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians are attempting to strengthen the front line and are advancing from two sides toward Molotokmanchka and Novodanilivka. Shelling continues in this area, but there have been no new changes over the past day. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue their attacks near the Antonivsky Bridge and are advancing toward Zabich Island. However, the Ukrainian forces are effectively eliminating large numbers of Russians in this area, and the front line remains unchanged. And now let's move to the Toretsk direction. Activity here is on the rise again. Russian forces are assaulting Krymsk from two sides, advancing toward Delivka, continuing their push in Sherbinivka and attacking Leonidivka. So far, there have been no changes over the past day, but the situation remains challenging in the Chasiv Yar direction. The Russians are breaking through in the central part of the city. They are also assaulting Stupochki, advancing toward Bilahora, and conducting offensive actions near Novomarkove and Orikhovo-Vasilivka. Interestingly, the northern flank above Chasiv Yar is no longer of particular importance to the Russians. They have already captured two residential districts there and are now advancing south. Therefore, attacks near these two settlements indicate their attempt to extend the front line toward Kramatorsk. From the current front line to the city's outskirts, only slightly more than 17 kilometers remain. In the Siversk direction, the Russians continue to assault Vasyukivka but haven't achieved any new successes. For now, the situation remains unchanged. In the Lyman direction, the Russians are advancing toward Zelena Dolina, assaulting Novolyubivka and Zarychne. However, despite their heightened activity, the Ukrainian forces continue to hold the defense and the front line remains unchanged. In the Borova direction, the Russians are attacking Bogoslavka, Nova Kruglякivka, Зелений Гай, Kopanki, and Novoyegorivka. Further south, there is no activity and the front line hasn't shifted over the past day. In the Kupiansk direction. The Russians are advancing near Pishane, assaulting Glushkivka, and heavy fighting is ongoing on the outskirts of Dvorichna. For now, there are no changes to the front line, but the situation remains very tense. In the Kharkiv direction, the Russians are continuing their shelling but haven't launched any new assaults along the front line. Meanwhile, in Vovchansk, the Russians persist with their attacks, but the Ukrainian forces have managed to capture some of them as prisoners, and Russian forces continue to see no success. In the Kursk direction, Russian and North Korean forces continue their counteroffensive, but they haven't achieved any new successes, and the front line has remained unchanged over the past day. Meanwhile, Zelensky continues to state that Putin is not interested in negotiations. However, the Kremlin and Putin himself have made official statements 3 times expressing their willingness to negotiate with Trump, claiming there is much to discuss. Yet, Trump hasn't scheduled any meetings or calls with Putin.
For example, I've spoken with President Trump, and we discussed the Budapest Memorandum, NATO, why NATO is critical for Ukraine, and the importance of security guarantees. We went into detail about the Normandy format and the times when Putin gave his word but failed to keep it. To me, this is crucial when you think about negotiating with someone. If the other side consistently breaks promises and frequently lies, you need exceptional conditions. You must create an environment where, regardless of agreements, it's impossible for them to be broken or for war to return to Ukraine. I felt during our meeting that Trump wants this, and I told him bluntly that Putin absolutely does not. So, this won't happen quickly. It simply won't. However, Trump, thanks to the strength of the United States, its sanctions, economy, and influence, could accelerate this process. At least, he could achieve it faster than anyone else in the world today, in my opinion. Considering the US military economy, global economic influence, and Trump's personal qualities, I believe.
Meanwhile, it's reported that despite the end of the war, Trump has resumed supplying Israel with 2,000-pound bombs. Clearly, support for Israel is even increasing. Whether the same will happen with Ukraine remains a big question. Trump recently delivered another speech lasting just over 40 minutes, where he discussed his plans for America, including which laws he intends to repeal. However, Ukraine and negotiations were not mentioned at all. For now, we are left waiting. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.